Hello, is this thing on?
Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you very much for coming out this evening to our Thursday evening lecture. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to talk mention a few of the upcoming lectures that we have in the Archives and History Library. We're very appreciative that you come and attend these. I see J.R. Fox all the way from the Eastern Panhandle, so you get the award for furthest distance travel. September the 4th, we have Dean Six, who will be doing a lecture on American glass. On September the 13th, we will have Susie Skouras, West Virginia Cookbooks. And on October 2nd, Stan Bumgarner will come and do a presentation on postcards of West Virginia. So we look forward to all of those. Tonight's speaker is me. My name is Joe Geiger. I'm the Director of Archives and History, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to kind of take you through the Archives and History website, hopefully showing you some things that you've not seen. I'm sure I see a lot of familiar faces. I know you've utilized our website, but we'll try to walk through some of the things that we have buried in our site. We recognize that one of the most difficult things when we get the quantity of information that we have on our website is making it so that you can find it. And hopefully we'll get some suggestions from you as to how better to present those materials online. Before I go to the website, I do want to talk about what we do here at Archives and History. Our primary mission is to preserve the history of West Virginia, and we'll talk about the different forms in which we do that. But we're involved in a lot of other projects as well. For example, you see the Veterans Memorial out here on the Capitol grounds. The Archives and History staff was involved in doing the research to produce the names that are on that Veterans Memorial. We'll go ahead and show you where you can find information on that. Make our mouse work. This is our front page, and I did a check today. I usually tell people that if you do a search on West Virginia history, we come up right under that dastardly Wikipedia article on West Virginia history. But I checked today, and we came in first, or we're in first right now. So if you do a search on Google on West Virginia history, the Archives and History site will be the first one that comes up. If you're looking for information about the Veterans Memorial, we have a link right here on our front page that says Veterans Memorial Archives. Now, if you go to this page, you can see several options. If you're looking within the database, of course, you just go to the search the database link. And if you were looking, for example, for World War II soldiers on the memorial from Mercer County, you could go down here and click All, Submit Query, and there you have a list. And one neat little feature, if you're trying to get an alphabetical listing of these, for example, you can click on the words last name, and it will alphabetize those records. Within that, of course, you can click on any of the individual names, and it will take you to the record itself. And these records, in terms of the quantity of information, vary from soldier to soldier. You can see on this one, we have about 30 different fields here. This one is a little sparse, but some of these will have quite a bit of information on here. So again, a lot of different ways that you can find out. The Veterans Memorial was constructed to honor West Virginians who died during 20th century periods of conflict. We get calls frequently saying, my grandfather just passed away and I want to make sure he's added to the Veterans Memorial. The memorial is just for those persons who lost their lives during those periods of conflict. And we have another page on this front link that will actually give you guidelines. This Veterans Memorial will give you guidelines as to the periods of conflict there. It will tell you this is the period within which that person had to have lost their life. I should show here, I see in attendance Pat McClure. Pat, raise your hand. Pat is one of our volunteers here at Archives and History, and she's been very deeply involved in creating biographies. The next step, obviously we have individual records for these soldiers, but we also wanted to find ways to individualize some of these, and we've been creating biographies. We started out with ones that we had thick folders on, so to speak. If we had photographs of individuals, if we had documents kind of telling the story, we created those biographies first. Those are the ones that we tackled first. But Pat has created dozens and dozens of biographies using a great deal of research, and she's done phenomenal work. If you click here, for example, on one of these soldiers, we'll click a familiar name if you're from the Charleston area, John Morgan Brawley. You can see we try at the very top. Now this quote is from Patrick Henry. If we find a quote specific to that soldier, then we'll put that up there. But we try to make these uniform. We have a photograph there. We have their lifespan. We usually have some kind of quote. And then you can go through there and see a little biographical information about each of these soldiers. You can see photographs. You can see if we click on any of these links, for example, it's going to show you an extract from a city directory that showed him as a clerk. If you go down here a little bit further, you'll see lost his life in battle. There's an actual card detailing that information. Go down a little bit further, you can see his grave stone, a road in the cemetery. That's actually a photograph of the sign. And if you go to the bottom, of course, the American Legion post is also named for him. So you can take each of those. And at the end of that biography, again, we tried to create honor uniformity. At the very beginning, of course, we used the word remember. At the bottom, we used the word honor. And what we've done is gone out with a camera and taken a photograph of that name carved on the Veterans Memorial. So this is a very important project, and we certainly salute Pat for all of her work in doing those biographies. Constance Baston is also working on this. Another thing we're involved in with Archives and History is the highway historical markers. You're probably familiar with those markers. They've been around since 1937. There are more than 1,000 of these scattered throughout West Virginia. If you turned in here to the parking lot right by the guard shack, you probably saw one for the state capitol. This one has a little bit different. You're used to seeing the white background with the black lettering. In the past, probably 4 or 5 years, we have undertaken a project to refurbish or to replace 300 of these markers. We've received generous appropriations from the legislature, and we've also received 4 grants to pay for these projects. And this was kind of a neat thing. The markers are something that even if you're not really interested in history, you know what they are, and you know what they mean. I had a gentleman who contacted me who was a motorcyclist, and he said, you know, we'd really like to, I've got some guys, and we'd really like to put together a project where we'd go and you know, photograph these markers. And I was a little hesitant, but finally kind of turned over the database to him. And these guys created a forum, an online forum that you can go to, where they have gone, usually with their motorcycle, parked next to the marker. You know, I don't know if we're getting to a biker gang thing or what, but they park their motorcycle, take a photograph of that marker. We had one guy who actually did the man of white thing, where his wife would stand there and pose right next to the marker like that. But the wonderful thing about this is it gave us an up-to-date photograph of what that marker's condition was. You know, the last survey that we had done might have been 10, 12 years ago, so a marker that was in perfect condition at that time, maybe all the paint had flaked off by now. So it gave us the information that we needed to make decisions as to whether a marker needed replaced or refurbished. Again, if you go from our front page to the Highway Historical Markers link, you can see what one of those looks like. You see some information about a marker book that we put out in 2003. There is the database. You can go and you can look, and you want to find out what markers are in Harris-Harding County. Just click Submit. And it gives you the title of the marker, it gives you the inscription, and it gives you the location. We have people, believe it or not, we have people who plan their vacations around, driving around to see these highway markers. It means a lot to different people. And you can see we try to keep up to date in terms of those markers that are missing, that are not in place, so that they don't waste their time driving 12 miles out of the way to see an empty post. So those markers, again, a big part of what we do around here. Another project that we're involved in is the Records Management and Preservation Board. We have several staff members who serve here. Denise Ferguson in the back is our county records archivist. The purpose of this board is to aid county officials like your county clerks, your circuit clerks, your assessors, your sheriffs, your prosecuting attorneys in preserving and managing their records. As you might imagine, with the Marcellus boom going on at this time, Our county clerk's records rooms are overrun. It's unbelievable if you go to one of these records rooms and see the activity taking place there as they're pulling down deed books and wills, tracing ownership of mineral rights. So this board has done very important work. They've given out more than $3 million in grants to county officials from all 55 counties to help them again manage and preserve their records. And you know, it might involve buying shelving or boxes. It might involve buying some kind of storage unit. It might involve reformatting records to digitize them and to create microfilm. So there are different purposes in dealing with these records. Another project that we've been very involved in, the next step, was creating a statewide preservation project. In this preservation project, the board gave us the direction to make sure that there was microfilm of every deed that's ever been recorded in West Virginia, and it's stored right here at the archives. We still rely upon microfilm as a preservation method, and you know, it's still very important in what we do here. But in the process, you know, the way we're doing this in a lot of cases is we're taking those deed books and we're digitizing them. We have equipment that will convert those digital images to microfilm. Well, naturally, we're creating those hundreds of thousands of digital files that we can then give back to those counties. They can, you know, put into their existing software systems so that when you walk into the courthouse, or our next generation walks into the courthouse, instead of pulling that book down off the shelf, they'll go to a computer, they'll type in a name, they'll pull up a record, they'll double click it, click print, and there it is. It certainly is a way of not only enhancing accessibility, but also in terms of preserving those original records. Very important. Greg Carroll, who's out in the Great Hall, he does Civil War medals. I'll probably touch on that at some point, but of course we had, I want to say 26,000 plus Civil War medals that were cast in 1866 after the war to distribute to Union soldiers who served in West Virginia regiments. We have about 4,000 of those that never found a home. We have them here in the archives. We have a list on our website, and you basically just have to prove your connection. You have to go back through primary sources, you know, birth records, death records, things like this, showing your connection to that soldier through an application process. Publications, one thing that is of value, Susie's not here tonight, but she creates a newsletter along with Mary Johnson that is extremely valuable. It of course tells what's going on here. This is a monthly newsletter that we put on our website, also distribute paper copies on occasion. But you know, it talks about new books that come in, but there are also genealogical related articles that appear on here, things that are of value to people. You take the subject index, for example, and you click down here and you're looking for information on cemeteries. You can click and you might find that we have some kind of article that would shed some light on something that you're doing research on. It's a PDF file. We'll hope it will come up. There it is. There it talks about some cemetery information on the SHPO website. Again, this newsletter is put together monthly. It takes a lot of work, but she creates an index that helps define information that might prove helpful to genealogists. We're involved in History Day at the legislature. This is something that our staff is very much involved in. Last year, I think we had 70 plus organizations from around the state who set up tables over at the Capitol Rotunda and shared information about what it is that they do at the local level. Part of that celebration includes the awarding of History Heroes. Do we have any History Heroes in the house? Well, our History Heroes, this is meant to honor those persons at the grassroots level who help to promote history, either state history, local history, whatever it might be. And I think we can find that here. And History Heroes, each year, of course, they have pictures taken, and we usually put those up on our website, a resolution image that can be passed on to the newspaper. Something that's relatively new and exciting, of course, as I said, our primary mission here is to preserve the history of West Virginia. We'll talk about the different ways that we do that. But we're also very interested in providing educational opportunities to students of all ages. You know, we have that captive audience of 8th graders every year that have to take West Virginia studies. But we want to give everyone an opportunity to learn more about this great state. In terms of the 8th graders, of course, we worked on the Golden Horseshoe exam for probably 10 plus years now. But 3 years ago, we initiated something known as History Bowl. And History Bowl is kind of a quiz bowl competition. Have you ever seen those old quiz bowls where you have 4 people lined up against 4 people and questions are asked? That's what this is. It's all about West Virginia history. And last year we had nearly 100 teams competing across the state in 8 regional tournaments. And the top 2 teams from each region advanced to a state tournament that we had here on April the 24th. And I have to tell you, it's extremely exciting to see the level of interest in a social studies or in a history competition. The first round, basically, each player has a buzzer, and it's an individual round. We ask the question, they buzz in. The second round is a team round where they gather together. We've seen some exciting things. The group from Moorfield, the teacher there, his students were coming in for several months at 6:30 in the morning to begin preparing for these. We were in Morgantown last year, and the 4 girls who comprised a particular team had a stack of index cards where they had printed out every one of our quiz bowl questions, and they were doing sleepovers, and that's what they were doing. I mean, how cool is that? But it's great to see these competitions. One of the questions that I think it was a little better this year, but last year we had a question that said, this guy who started on Gilligan's Island, lived in Princeton, this kind of thing. The kids were clueless. They had no idea who it was. And the parents are in the back of the room just waving their hands and dying to tell us Bob Denver. So it's a really exciting competition, and we look forward to that growing each year. Our workshops, of course, this is one of the lesser ones. We had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to get me here, but we've had some fantastic workshops and lectures in here. We're very thankful for those persons who present those. Of course, we don't pay a lot of money. In fact, we pay nothing to the people who do these lectures, and we're extremely grateful for your attendance at these events. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the website itself. That's why you're here. In terms of some of the quick and easy stuff, what's happening at Archives just presents to you information about upcoming events, lectures, workshops, things like this. Our annual showcase, which is held in December. This top bar is information for those persons who are coming here to do research. It tells you what you can bring into the library, what you can't bring into the library. It tells you if you want to, if you live in California and you want to submit a research request letter, this is how you do it. So this is information that you have at the top of this particular page. A lot of this stuff, and we'll walk through some of these things that are on the front page. I'm going to try to break this up into 3 different areas here, because again, it can be difficult to find things, I have to admit, on our website. But if you want to know what we have here in the archives, if you're looking for information about our holdings, the link that you want is the top one, State Archives. If you click on the State Archives event, it'll not only take you to our finding aids and different things, it kind of gives you an idea of what we have here in terms of our collections. I'll just quickly talk about a few of them. We have a manuscript collection, manuscript collections. These are things like letters and diaries, different materials like this. If you click on manuscript collections, you can scroll down through here and you'll see this is a complete listing of them. And if you notice over in the right-hand side, some of these have hyperlinks, and these that have hyperlinks are ones in which a finding aid has been created. Now let me tell you that the internet has changed everything for archives and history in 2 different ways. First of all, in terms of letting you know what we have in our collections. It used to be that you would have to walk in here, look at a notebook, and hopefully something had been done that you could find out whether or not we had the material that you needed. The internet provides us with the opportunity. It doesn't matter if you're in California, if you're in Damascus, Syria, wherever you might be, you can, if we have a finding aid for that particular collection, you can find something. And I'm going to try quickly to give you an example there. Again, how are we going to search? If we're out in the world, anywhere in the world, and we're doing research, we might do something like there are quote marks. type in something like Cedar Grove Supply Company. I'm doing research on them. Click enter, and you can see right there at the very top, we have a collection called the Tompkins Family Collection. And if you click, it will take you to that finding aid. And again, you could do a find on this page. What did I say it was? Supply. And you can go on through there and see we have all these materials. So again, no matter where you are in the world, if this finding aid is down to the folder level where it has what you need, you're going to know to come to the state archives or contact the state archives and look through this collection because it might have something of relevance to your research. So again, in terms of finding out what we have here in our collections, it's certainly at least given us the opportunity to provide you with a lot more information because these collections, again, our mission is to preserve them, but they belong to you. They belong to the people of West Virginia. It doesn't do any good sitting up on a shelf. You know, if it's something that needs to be collected, it's obviously something that should be used as well. I told you about the Civil War medals. You can click right there and get the listing. If you're wanting to find out if your ancestor has a Civil War medal here, you knew he fought in a Union regiment, you could go down through that listing and see if his name is there. And we just checked that, I think, last year, so it's a pretty up-to-date listing in terms of those medals that we have. If we go down through here, there was something else I wanted to remember. Newspapers. You want to find out what newspapers we have on microfilm, you can click on the county. And again, this is not perfect. It's a little outdated. We haven't updated in a while. But it does give you information on those newspapers that we have for each county. Oh, yearbooks. That's the one I wanted to show you. I never really thought about yearbooks, how important they are both to genealogists, to historians, just a treasure trove of information. And we had a gentleman by the name of Clay Hamilton who must have spent years on eBay purchasing yearbooks, West Virginia yearbooks, and then he donated, how many, Deborah? Probably 1,500 plus yearbooks, a massive collection.
I think it was more like 2,000.
More like 2,000 yearbooks, just a massive collection of these things. We had some yearbooks on hand. We've since added to these, but yearbooks are a really rich source of information. As you can see, we have a listing of all of those yearbooks that we have for each school. So if you're wanting to, look through your high school yearbook and you haven't seen it in 30 years, you might take a look and see if we have it here at the archives, and you can come in and look through that. I showed you our manuscripts collection. We also have something called special collections. I've never figured out how to define what special collections are. I think they may include our drawings as well, architectural drawings, things like scrapbooks, things like not cartoons, but the drawings like political cartoon type things, James Dent, Taylor Jones, things like this. So that's our special collections. Again, we have a listing of those. We have our photographs, and I'll show you those in just a moment. Our state government records, our archives, and I like to think of these as kind of our manuscripts of state government. Things like our Supreme Court case files. We have 538 boxes of Supreme Court case files, and these are wonderful, wonderful sources of information. Our governor's papers. We have governors going all the way back to the governor who wasn't the West Virginia governor, but the Virginia governor, Francis Pierpont. But we have papers, and a lot of these early governors, we actually had some volunteers from Capitol High School, some students who came here and worked with Deborah for a number of years. And some of these early governors, we actually have them listed by item. In other words, you can see that there's a letter from this fella to Governor J.J. Jacob, 1876, kind of the subject matter and where you can find that. So again, those finding aids, very valuable. Other things that you can see here, newspapers, bound newspapers. We have miscellaneous newspapers. Some of these are not entirely complete, but you can kind of get an idea. Down below here, you can see some things that might be of value. Greg Carroll did one on researching your Civil War ancestor. Jamie Simmons, who's in the back, did one on researching your Revolutionary War ancestor. And Harold Newman did one on researching adoptions that we must have taken off. I was going to show you a couple of new things here in just a second. The photographs. You guys like photographs. We have massive photograph collections. I don't think we can even count how many we have. I think we'd like to throw out a number like 300,000. Who knows? We have at least 50,000 that are in negative form. These are ones that we have created negatives of. We have several rows of collections, boxes and boxes of photographs that have not been inventoried upstairs. We also have cabinet files, subject files that contain information. If you want photographs, we have quite a few here. I want to show you just a couple of things. And again, very important to note that what I'm showing you, and particularly the primary source information that we have, we're just scratching the surface. And we're never going to have anywhere near half of 1% of our collections digitized and placed online. It's just not going to happen. It's just very difficult, to do the scanning, but of course you have to remember the indexing part as well. You can scan and scan and scan, and yet if you don't have an index so that you can find these things, it makes it very difficult. But we do have, again, we try to put collections out there, things that would be of interest, things that would be of value to folks. We have several here that I want to show you. This is one, if you've noticed out in the hallway when you exit from the museum, we were given that space, kind of a gallery space, in which we're putting photograph collections. We've had several of these that we've put up. We usually change it 3-4 times a year, just kind of to show off some of the materials that we do have in the archives. And we usually try to pick some kind of subject. You can see some of these that we have done in recent, well, I guess since the beginning. Mary Johnson over here, who does our website these days, went and found the digital files and created online collections that mirror the ones that we had or have out in the hallway. You can see some of the ones that we've done. 1960 primary, I'll touch on a little bit, and so that will be the case with John Brown. Schools, this is kind of neat. Actually, this is not what I want to show you. I'll show you that one. Sorry. Pick of the week. This is the one that everybody likes. This is certainly one of my faves. Pick of the week is just something that we did for a while. We've not been really good about keeping it up, and that's my fault. But we tried to find some really cool photograph that we had in our collections and put it up. One of my favorites is the very first one here. See the little girl with her pet possums? And again, we could go down through here and look at these. And I urge you, when you get a chance to go through and look at some of these collections. Miss Gates, I believe that that's your family right there, is it not?
Their father was in the West Virginia legislature.
Father in the West Virginia legislature. That's really neat photograph there. We probably have about 100 of those that we put in our picks of the week. One of those things that we've done. This is kind of a cool one. Ceramic grasshopper. I'm not going to bore you with going through, but again, we have some really neat collections that we have digitized and placed out there. Of course, this being the sesquicentennial, we'll touch on that in a moment. We focused on that quite a bit. That Mountain State Forest Festival, that's another neat one. What do we have out there now? We have like Outdoor Life, I believe, Deborah, is that right?
I think so.
So if you get a chance before you leave this evening, you might take a walk out there and look at that. Another one we did, Celebrating Lives, is something we did for Black History Month a few years back. And again, we just took photographs that we had in our collection relating to African American life in West Virginia. There are some really high quality images. They're relatively low resolution because again, things change as we go on in terms of what we put. That's Celebrating Lives. You can find that under our photograph collection. I thought there was one more that I wanted to show you. But we'll go on down the road. So that's a lot of what you find here. The Voyager Online Catalog, we also have a link to that on our front page. In the online catalog, you can see aren't all that many books. Is this all the books that you have in the archives? No, we have rows and rows of books that are up on our third floor. The vast majority of our books, we try to collect anything written about West Virginia, written by West Virginians, and you find those by going to our online catalog, doing a search, and writing down a number, and staff will come and pull that book for you. A couple other things I want to show you. One that's a really neat addition. I'm not sure. I don't think we'll access it. I think that's the majority of what I wanted to show you on here. Again, if you want to know things that we have in our collections, State Archives link from the front page takes you where you want to be. Okay? This is why you really came here. Deborah Basham, superstar in the back. Births, deaths, and marriages. How many of you utilize this database of births, deaths, and marriages? I would venture to say that most of you here are at least aware of it. This was a fantastic project that really put West Virginia at the forefront in terms of making primary source documents available free of charge. You don't have to go on and get a subscription somewhere. You come right here and start your searching. And I know a lot of people, my mother included, who have gotten into genealogy just because these records were available. This was a very lengthy project in conjunction with GSU, Deborah, Family Search.
Genealogical Society of Utah.
GSU, the Genealogical Society of Utah, did the conversion from microfilm to digital images and also did indexing for us. And Deborah spent probably years going through and checking indexes. We have millions of records on here. This database includes birth records, and really if you click on the particular record group, you'll see on the right-hand side what we have for each county. In general, what we have, just a quick explanation, of course, most of you are aware, statewide birth, death, and marriage certificates don't start in West Virginia until 1917. Prior to that time, the only record was at the county level. And the county records don't start, in most cases, until 1853. So for that period of time, from 1853 to 1917, you're reliant upon that county record. In 1917, for example, if we did a search here,
you won't find. Well,
what happened? I mean,
you're in birth.
Oh,
You're in birth and you're too recent.
Since she was born in the 1840s, I don't think she's going to show up. Type in. And very important, I may as well point that out as well. You see that little asterisk that I put here. If you're doing a search out there and you're doing a search on, Johnson's not a good example, but let's use it anyway. You know that sometimes your family spelled it J-O-N-S-O-N and sometimes they spelled it J-O-H-N-S-O-N. If you started by typing in the letters J-O and then put an asterisk, it's going to pick up every last name that begins with those two letters, okay? So they call it a wild card search, but it's very helpful because we have not only mistakes that were made in the recording, but probably mistakes that were made when it was indexed. And so, you know, it may be spelled incorrectly. So, you know, if you're not finding your person, you may want to try this wild card search as a way of doing that. I am in deaths now, aren't I, Deborah? All right, I go down to Pocahontas County. What I was talking about is the fact that for records that are after a certain period of time, you can see I'm looking at Mary Ellen Geiger, and that would have been my great-great-grandmother who was never married, had 4 kids. Don't know the whole story, but you can see we've got 2 different records there. One of them is 1971K, the other is 126K. One of those is the county death record, and one of those is the statewide death certificate. If you click on that, you can actually see the certificate itself. You can see her name. You can see that she died when she was 86 years, 6 months, and was a housekeeper until she was 82, so she must have been fairly active. Down here, we don't know who her mother was, we know who her father was, and then on the right-hand side, it gives you information as to the causes of death. One that's a favorite, of course, here in West Virginia, because he happened to be passing through, but anytime we use this as an example, we show it. You know where I'm going. Hank Williams happened to die. Oh, what happened, Hank?
You let Pocahontas in.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. Thankful Deborah's here. Keep it straight. Take that off. We'll see Hank has both a death certificate and a death record from Fayette County. If you click there, you can see he was a radio singer and entertainer. Information about where he was buried. The person who signed the certificate. Acute alcoholism, one of the reasons for his death. Mother's name. So again, this is something that we're extremely proud of, that we're grateful to Deborah for all her hard work on this particular project. And it's something that will continue, this Vital Records project. We are starting now. Deborah's working on delayed birth certificates. We'll be putting those up through 1910, I believe she told me today. We're also starting to plan and lay the groundwork for creating databases for naturalization records, for military discharges from World War I, and also for wills, which will be extremely helpful, I think, once we figure out how to get that done. It's going to take a lot of work, but again, it's one of those things that people really do have an appreciation for. All right, let's see. Quick quizzes. Let's show you just a little bit. You know, as I said, we have those 8th graders that are a captive audience who have to take West Virginia history, board to tears, and we tried to find a way that we could reach out to them and bring them back to our website on a daily basis. What we came up with was creating a daily trivia question. You know, kids love trivia. More than anything else, they love to see their name in print. We are not in, obviously, we're in our off-season, so to speak, so we don't have a lot of respondents. But what happens is they come in, they type in their answer, they type in their name, they type in their email address, and they click submit. We actually have an automated generated system that will send an answer, send a reply back to them the next day that says, yes, you are correct, congratulations, thank you for playing, or something like that, and or sorry you're incorrect, try again tomorrow, that kind of thing. And it lists their name down here at the bottom. That's the key part. We do have to be aware, I've told Mary on several occasions, you need to check that name, because sometimes the names that they submit are not really names. They like to pull one over on us if they can. But again, they compete with one another. We have teachers who use this as kind of a bell ringer. We actually had one teacher who contacted Mary and asked if she could not put that trivia question up a little bit quicker, because her first class came in and she wanted to have that ready to go. So we have that each day for the students to come in and use that. And again, it's something that not just 8th graders, we have people on here. I was going to say, I'm willing to bet Mary Sue Fraser, June Wiseman, and John Stanley, they've been doing this thing for probably 10 years. They come on there every day and answer these trivia questions. We took these trivia questions, and again, this was in the early days when we were working on the Golden Horseshoe materials for the Department of Education, and we put them into what we call quick quizzes. Quick quizzes are sets, we group them in sets of 10 questions. You can go into any of these, click go, and it tells you most hardwood lumber produced in West Virginia is shipped out of state. I chose a bad one. Let's say building sailboats. No, I'm sorry, incorrect. Try again. Try conducting. That didn't work. Anybody have a guess? It's not manufacturing baseball. Oh, okay. So it's making furniture. Most hardwood lumber produced in West Virginia. So again, what you just saw was interactivity. And young people love interactivity. This is about as low level as interactivity as you can have, but nonetheless, they click something and something happens. So you can go on to the next question. Elected official, anybody know the answer to this one? The elected official of our state who supervises elections of all state officials. Secretary of State. Now, this is what I wanted to take you to, and this is probably not a great example, but kind of an example. If you're studying for the Golden Horseshoe, if you're preparing for History Bowl, you can go through, click on, find out what the answer is, and now you have that in your memory bank, so you can answer that question when it pops up. What we wanted to do is provide opportunities for those persons who wanted to go a little bit deeper, who wanted to find out a little bit more, not just what the answer was, but they might want to know something more about the Secretary of State. In this case, what we have is a listing of persons who have served in that particular office. I'd like to find a good example, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time looking for one. Let's see if we can. Oh, there's the Polka King. All right, well, let's try this one. We know that the Mountain State Forest Festival is held in Elkins. So we click on that, and we click Learn More. First Mountain State Forest Festival. We're going to click on this link, and it's going to take you to one of our On This Days in West Virginia History, and I'll try to quickly review that in just a moment. What we did with On This Day of West Virginia History, and I think we did this as part of our centennial celebration, where we looked for an event that occurred in our state And when you find an event that says, you know, somebody got robbed or something like that, you know we were desperate for that day. We couldn't find much of anything to put up. But we tried to cover those highlights. We tried to cover all 55 counties for inclusion purposes. But we looked for events, important events in our state's history that we could supplement by providing primary sources. In other words, by using photographs from our collection, using letters, maps, diaries, different things like that, newspaper articles, things in our collection that would, again, take you to those primary sources. And that's the second thing that I want to point out in terms of our website. It's allowed us to provide you with those primary source materials. Again, any exhibits, the exhibits when I show you later, the on this days, the purpose is taking you, to something that is not what Joe Geiger has to say about something, but about those persons who actually participated in this event, whether it's the creation of West Virginia, John Brown's raid, the 1960 presidential campaign, whatever it is, to read those primary source documents that are so essential. Again, with this one, we probably have a couple of newspaper articles. There is the program from the first Mountain State Forest Festival. This bottom link is a bill from the A. Spates Brady collection for the Mountain State Forest Festival. So again, this isn't the best example, but it does kind of give you a picture of the purpose. Not only these quick quizzes give you that answer, but oftentimes they give you an opportunity to learn more about a particular subject. Those are the quick quizzes, and again, they have been very successful, and they go hand in hand with what we've done with History Bowl. I'm going to go back that far. What do we have next? I have listed, there's our Voyager online catalog link down here. How about our On This Day in West Virginia History? That's kind of what I showed you an example of just now. I don't remember where, August 9th, it probably was on the front page. This one is a link to former Logan County Sheriff Don Chafin died in Huntington on August 9th, 1954. Of course, those familiar with the Mine Wars period recognize that name of Don Chafin. There we have a photograph from our collection. We have probably that was, what do we call that, Time Trail, West Virginia. There is a court case. It's probably the front page of a court case versus Don Chafin. I'm sure relating to the Mine Wars probably in some regard. There is an article. There's an article on West Virginia Mine Wars. There are articles relating to his funeral. So again, the On This Day, and I won't go through a bunch of them. I would point out, though, that we have a number of these. Let me see if I can take you to, let's try the October one, because I want to mention something else. New River Gorge Bridge dedication. This one was a wonderful one. I really thought you could see they're just about completed with the construction of it. You can see the different things that we have. Obviously, we have a couple of articles relating to that. We have the remarks of Governor J. Rockefeller. And this is really cool because when you go through the video clip, you can see him reading those remarks. Up in the Jennings-Randolph, the same kind of thing. You can see the yellow pieces of paper flapping in the breeze. We can go up there and hold those pieces of paper. They're right there in our collection. So again, we're able to take these materials and share them with you. So there is Jay's speech from that day, cross-throughs, additions, everything you can imagine. The other thing, nice little gig there. There's an envelope, official envelope. And here's something that we've really gotten into, and I probably shouldn't jump ahead, but our video clips. Dick Faust is back there videoing tonight. He's in charge of our audio-visual materials. And we have a tremendous collection that we've added online. And I'll show you just a couple of examples of that. But you can see we have two clips. One of them of the construction of New River Gorge Bridge. And this one,
after 4 years of construction and an investment of $37 million, the dedication of the New River Bridge had 30,000 people came, some to be among the first to walk or ride across the world's longest steel arch bridge.
Nice.
Along with former governors Hewlett Smith and Oakey Patterson, William Ritchie were here to see the bridge open.
The opening of this bridge will bring our people of the South and our people of the North closer together than ever before. It will give us not only new transportation, but new lifeblood. But we must never forget the heritage and the history of which we all are merely trustees.
But for the thousands of people who came to Fayette County today, this was the moment. And the New River Bridge was built. Governor Rockefeller, his wife, and 16-year-old Tom Wood of Fayetteville, who won the distinction through a contest, led a caravan of hundreds of cars across the 3,030 feet of the bridge.
This bridge has a special significance. It represents a link to our past, a bridge to our future. It is a fitting monument to a modern, prosperous West Virginia.
That's pretty neat. And again, this is something that students love. They're used to YouTube, and so we jumped right on board. We actually have a Facebook page, have more than 1,200 followers, and likes, I guess is what that particular page is. And we have a YouTube page. Any of the events that we have in here, we had people contacting us saying, I'd love to come to your event, but I live in California. I can't make it. So we were able to not stream these things, but actually Dick is recording them, and we'll be able to put these on our website so that people that aren't able to come to learn about the Hatfields, McCoys, or whatever other subject matter that we have can watch it at their convenience in their homes. A couple of other things to show you. Our online exhibits. This is something that we've done several very important ones. This is one on the USS West Virginia, the battleship. You can go through, and this was one of our first ones, so we were kind of feeling our way through it. Again, giving you just a little bit of information about this, taking you to links. In this case, there's a poem that was written about the battleship. You can click on any of these photographs and look at them. There's when the battleship was launched. This one is pretty breathtaking. When you look at some of the damage that was done to this battleship, the salvage operations that took place, reading the action reports, reading the salvage reports that talk about all of the things that had to happen to bring this battleship back into commission. You get an idea of the size of that battleship from right there. It takes you all the way through. Of course, it was at the surrender ceremony, and this is the sad end when it was actually decommissioned, all in and taken in for salvage, and that's the end result when all of that metal was taken apart. Another exhibit that we have that's very valuable, particularly during this time, is State of Convenience, which is an online exhibit relating to the creation of West Virginia. Again, if you want to know how West Virginia was created, this is the way to do it. You go through here. It's written chapter by chapter. And again, the primary purpose is to take you to those primary source documents. We give you kind of a quick history of each of these sections. We broke these up into chapters, but we're taking you to those primary source documents. One of my favorite parts, you go here to the Constitutional Convention. Again, what name was West Virginia initially to be called? Any guesses? Kanawha, exactly. Yes, the voters approved Kanawha when they voted on October the 24th of '61. You can see this was actually extracted. My Marshall students hate the fact that we OCR'd about 3,000 pages of the debates and proceedings of the Constitutional Convention. You can see them right here. They're like, people didn't really talk like that, did they? But you can see, these are the actual words as they're being said. They're making decisions on the boundaries of this new state, on the name, on what they will do in relation to slavery. And again, you can read the words of those individuals. One of my favorite parts is going, and this was simply extracted from the Constitutional Convention debates and proceedings. You can see that's, and this is the wonderful thing about the internet in terms of making things accessible. We have, Deborah, I believe, the Granville Hall, we have some of the handwritten notes where this guy was the secretary of this Constitutional Convention. He sat there, wrote down things, they got published in the paper. In the 1930s or 40s, I believe the WU professor published a 3-volume set, 3,000 pages of this. So now you have maybe 500 copies across the world. We're able to OCR this, put it online, and now it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can access these same documents. So again, it's given us wonderful opportunities. But you can scroll down here and you can see, Mr. President, I move to strike out the word Kanawha. Somebody else seconds that, and then all hell breaks loose. Because you had a lot of people there who were in favor of Kanawha. You had people who complained and said, look, we already live in what's known as Kanawha Courthouse. We live in Kanawha County. We've got 2 rivers like this. You can just imagine sending a postcard to your girlfriend that was, Kanawha Courthouse, comma, Kanawha County, comma, state of Kanawha. You get a little confusing. You had somebody else who summed it up by saying, too hard to spell or pronounce. And for those of us here at the archives who take phone calls from somebody asking about Kanawha County, we know they're probably not from West Virginia. But you can understand it. And then the big debate became over whether or not to include Virginia. You had a lot of people who put the blame on those people from Virginia who had left the Union. We don't want any part to do with that. You got other people who said we've been Virginians all our lives. We're not going to dump that. So you can go through, again, that whole debate. You can go toward the end here. I'll show you just one more thing from this exhibit. Sorry. But our new state of West Virginia. You can go right there and you can see this is actually a J.H. Disbar sketch of Arthur Borman, our first governor, giving his inaugural address on June 20th of 1863. And there are all kinds of different documents and things that you can see. This was the online statehood exhibit, very, very useful. Another one that's extremely useful was done by Mary Johnson. We have one of the largest collections of John Brown materials in existence. And many moons ago, she put together a database of those materials, and I'll try to show you those quickly in just a moment. But she took those primary source materials and, again, along that same line, created an online exhibit on John Brown and his raid. We can go here to the table of contents and see the same kind of thing. If we want to click on the raid itself, you can go through, you can see images. And any of these images, you can enlarge, JR, you might be interested in some of this stuff. Harper's Ferry. Go down to the raid. You can see sketches, photographs, different things like this. And down at the bottom, this is really cool stuff too. Primary sources, you can actually see the letter here from John Brown written to J.Q. Anderson. Was that the father of the Anderson who was killed? I think kind of explaining what happened to his son during this. You can see right there, Jeremiah Anderson was fighting bravely by my side at Harper's Ferry up to the moment when I fell wounded. And how cool was that to be able to actually read that letter? We'll touch on it.
They did a
Wonderful job putting together this online exhibit. And you can see all of this testimony, all of these people when they did the investigation, the Senate Select Committee, they're giving their testimony. They were there, and they're describing their view of this historic event. You can't get any better than that. I think the most recent online exhibit that we did was for the 50th anniversary, in another way in just a moment, 1960 presidential campaign, and specifically the Democratic primary. Of course, John F. Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey there on the left were the 2 people. And West Virginia was a deciding state for Kennedy. A lot of people questioned whether he could win here. Certainly it was very important to him. He sunk a lot of time, a lot of money into winning West Virginia. And actually, in the end, it would be the deciding factor. The fact that he won West Virginia led Humphrey to drop out of the race, and the Democratic primary was his. So what we have, Brian Ward did an article summarizing the campaign. But for a lot of folks, they'll go here to their county. They'll want to say, I remember Kennedy coming to Cabell County. So you can click here, and it tells you which of the campaign players were in Cabell County on a particular date. And if you click any of those dates, it will take you to that day. And these are what the days look like. Again, if Franklin Roosevelt was here, if somebody else was here representing them, we listed those campaigners as well as the candidates themselves. And you can see that on May 3rd, John Kennedy was in Welch, Hubert Humphrey was in Huntington, and Robert Kennedy was in Beckley. And then you can click any of these articles that will take you to, we went through well over 100 papers and have, I don't know, 600, 700 maybe articles that have been placed online. Pretty neat to read those. Again, you're getting a picture from that time period. Photographs, all kinds of photographs as part of this collection. Letters, there's a letter from Cecil Underwood condemning what happened, something to do with the campaign. So again, you can go through there and find out either by date or by county what events were occurring. But you can also go down here and look at the primary documents themselves. You can look at the audiovisual materials. Dick, I think we have somewhere between 35 and 40 maybe clips from this campaign, whether it be the debates that were happening or a campaign appearance somewhere. We have speeches that Kennedy made, oral histories, photographs you saw, advertisements and cartoons. These are really cool, some of these things showing not a pro-Kennedy perspective. And these documents, you gotta love the documents. And we put some of these, and some of these, the very fact that we put together this online exhibit added to our collections a little bit. Two very quick stories. I promised to move ahead. There was a fellow over in Kanawha City who was a bag boy at Kroger or something. And he was coming through, and I don't know if any of you all remember, but it used to be when you went to the grocery store, you used to get these brown paper bags. You probably remember those. Anyway, the bag boy didn't have a piece of paper, so he actually tore off a piece of one of those brown paper bags and got Hubert Humphrey to sign his name on that document. The next week, Kennedy came through campaigning. He flipped the piece of brown paper over and got his signature on the other side. And when we got it in, it was actually in a clear glass thing where you could see both sides. But we scanned that. As you can see, the top one there has Humphrey. The bottom one there is Jack Kennedy. So that's pretty cool. The other quick note that I'll tell you is we had a lady whose husband had been the head of West Virginians for Kennedy, and he was accompanying him around. And while he was in West Virginia, about May 1st, John F. Kennedy lost his voice. He couldn't speak. He would show up at the events and wave and maybe whisper a word or two, but he couldn't speak. So this Matt Reese went through the state with him and was going to do his speaking for him. He was going to do this. So they're in the car on the way over, and Matt Reese said, if you give me the speech, I'll go ahead and start getting ready. And Kennedy said, I don't have a speech, you know. And so the guy, you can just imagine, starting to panic that he's going to show up and speak for Kennedy without anything written. So Kennedy jotted down some things on a piece of paper, and his widow turned that over to us. And you can see some of the things here that he's jotting down, some of the comments that he thought that would be relevant for Matt Reese to say. Anyway, let me just show you this one. This was kind of funny. And it goes to show you, again, from our perspective, you know, we don't think about there being opposition to Kennedy. Of course, when the general election occurred, and we do have Nixon visitations here as well, and materials relating to him being in West Virginia. You have to remember how close that election was. It was very close. So half of our country were not Kennedy supporters. And this piece came out of the River Cup collection, I think, and you can see there, not quite flattery to Kennedy. You can see the White House not a stable for jackasses. So this was not a pro-Kennedy piece, to say the least. But again, primary source documents, a whole string of them here, correspondence from Kennedy. Kennedy was here, you know, I know he was here in 58. He may have been here in 56 campaigning, kind of setting the stage for what would happen in May of 1960. Anyway, that's the JFK exhibit. Pretty good stuff. A couple of projects that we've been involved in. Let me just show you quickly the databases so you'll know where those are. And some of these we've already touched upon. Mary's John Brown database is over there on the left. You saw the markers. The Golden Horseshoe. Anybody in here ever win the Golden Horseshoe and come into Charleston? You can probably look on here and find your name. And it's another one of those databases where you can go, search the database, and if you want to look for your name, if you want to search by county, you can put them in order. Golden Horseshoe has more than 15,000 West Virginians who have won that award. Our periodicals and state documents, again, things that we have in our collections. Kathy Miller, who works upstairs, created databases where you can search and find out what we have in those collections. And something that she recently finished that's extremely useful for students in particular is our vertical files database. She worked for years on this. We have upstairs clippings, essentially. Most of them are clippings. Cut out an article on some particular event, somebody laminated it, we put it in our collection. And then Kathy went through and we have more than 40,000 of these things. And if somebody's, if a fourth grader's coming and saying, I'm doing a social studies project on baseball in West Virginia, we might go into this database and just do a search on the word baseball and see what we have up in the clipping file. You see 181 records. And here's the good thing. I mean, if you're not able to come into the archives, you can find out what newspaper that came from and the date, so that if you're living in Morgantown, for example, and you have access to the Charleston paper over at WVU, you can go over and you know what date that particular article that might be of interest to you can be found. So again, we're very thankful for her work on that. I think that's the primary stuff I wanted to show you here. Of course, we are celebrating the sesquicentennial of West Virginia's statehood and commemorating the Civil War 150 years ago. And we are doing that by creating some things that should be useful for years to come. And a lot of the projects that we do, we don't put up a project and take it down as soon as the hoopla is over. The intent is to put up materials that will be useful for as long as there's an Archives and History website. Some of the things that we have done as part of the sesquicentennial project, and I'll just cover two quickly. You can see some of the things that might be of use, of course, links to John Brown and to the statehood exhibit. The two things that I always like to point out that are going to be useful for folks, first of all, our timeline. We kind of went in the same direction in a way as this day in West Virginia history. In other words, we tried to find an event or events that occurred 150 years prior and put some primary source document up to that. So if we went to, I don't know if today is a good day or not. If we go, it is a good day. Look at that. August 9th of 1862, in other words, 150 years ago today, we had all these things happening. There are actually a bunch of meetings, and they certainly like to hold a lot of meetings during that whole statehood process. But you can see meetings were held in Cameron, a meeting was held in Wetzel County, a meeting was held in Upshur County. We'll click on that one. You can see right there, there's a meeting from it. We talked about the resolutions and speeches. It seems like in all these meetings, people would get together, they would pass resolutions and make sure they were published in the newspaper. And again, you can read all these words. This is from that newspaper, in this case, the Wheeling Intelligencer, from August 16th, but it related to an event that occurred on August 9th. So again, you can go through there and click these materials. We used primarily newspapers such as the Wheeling Intelligencer, of course. Tried to get a balanced perspective, so we went through the Richmond Daily Dispatch and a couple of other southern newspapers, because it's very important to note that West Virginia was very badly divided. I'm not talking about Virginia badly just going there and destroying that. There is actually just a little history that happened. That's the timeline. Again, very useful and kind of neat, and that's something that we post every day on Facebook. You probably get tired of seeing it on Facebook, but again, it's something to connect with people every day and give them that opportunity to learn each and every day. This was a fantastic project. The late Jerry Grady, who was a wonderful supporter of Archives and History, who was a former teacher and volunteered here for a number of months, did some fantastic work in terms of digitizing a large collection of materials that we have here that we call the Union Militia Collection. Now, the Union Militia Collection, these are folks who didn't serve in regular units. They didn't serve in the 3rd West Virginia Infantry or something like that. They were kind of like, they were home guards. They were folks who were called up when there was some crisis in the area. You can go here to the database itself. If you're looking for an ancestor, you know they fought in the Civil War, and you can't find them in any regular unit. You might try here, and you can do a search. You could just search by county and find out how many you have in a particular county. And you can click by last name, put them in order. Now, it's minimal information. In terms of the database itself, we had all these muster cards, and there really wasn't a lot of information on there. So if you click any of the individual cards, you might see something like that. Not a whole lot. Some of my favorites, there was one in there, maybe two, that noted at the bottom that the fellow was too young and his mother came to camp and hauled him away. You could just imagine how mortified he was as mom showed up, grabbed him by the hand, and dragged him back home. Anyway, these Union militia, over 33,000 of these records, and I kind of went through and looked for unique names, and there are more than 25,000 unique names here. That's very important when you try to discern sentiment in West Virginia, whether pro-Union or pro-Confederate. This is certainly something that comes into play. Yes, ma'am.
Are we to assume that what you're showing here with those names, etc., that those are the individuals that fought for the northern places?
That's correct, and I'm actually looking a little bit. Now, important to note, we have Union soldiers, we have Confederate soldiers from West Virginia. These guys are Union militia. In other words, they were on the Union side only, from what I can gather. We know that most of the Confederate militia units were absorbed into, if they were some Cabell County militia, they became maybe a part of the 8th Virginia Cavalry or something like that. A regular, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where would one find that?
In terms of?
Those who were from a particular company that joined the Confederate.
Well, they would be found in Confederate records. We have back there the muster rolls on microfilm of Confederate soldiers, all the Virginia units, so you can go back there and pull those up. There have also been a number of books. The Virginia Regimental History Series does a good job. I think one of the volumes talks about the morphing of the militia into the regular units. I'm trying to do a little research now on the Union side of things because I'm finding in a lot of this correspondence that I'm about to show you that a lot of the militia leaders are saying, look, a lot of my militia folks are rebel in nature. So there needs to be some further research to determine, yes, I found 25,000 pro-Union folks. Are they truly pro-Union? Or are some of these guys that are on the Union militia rolls actually Confederate supporters? So it may take a little bit more work, but most of the guys that were in militia units prior to the war who sided with the Confederacy can be found in regular Confederate unit records. Okay? These are wonderful primary sources for a number of reasons. First of all, if you're interested in the Civil War, if you're interested in county history, you can go here and look at these documents. And again, they're just gold. You click on Wyoming, you can see those that are hyperlinked. The other things that we scanned were the correspondence pieces. We didn't do the muster rolls, anything like that, but the correspondence pieces themselves. You can click here. And for me, the real neat thing, and we've had some volunteers who have done transcribing, but is to go through and actually try to transcribe this. And it's wonderful for students as well today because most of them aren't learning how to use cursive, much less how to understand it. And so often with these letters, again, you're looking at that primary source. You may not be able to figure out at first glance what they're saying because a lot of them can't spell. You're trying to figure out exactly what it is that they're saying. So oftentimes you have to look at the words in context and kind of sound out the whole sentence and say, oh, that's what that word is. You can see this is a wonderful letter dealing with a guerrilla confrontation. I don't know if it was actually in Wyoming County, but a very lengthy description of what happened. And just by glancing at that page, you can see some misspellings, and it's difficult to follow, but this is really gold. Very valuable. We're very grateful to Jerry for his extensive work in putting this together. We have, I know there are thousands of those letters that you can see. In most counties, of course, you're not going to find anything for Jefferson County. You're not going to find anything for some of these counties that were overwhelmingly Confederate, but you're surprised to see some of these. You know, for example, that something like that Hardee County was overwhelmingly Confederate, but if you look in there, you'll see that there is correspondence. Of course, after the war, we had that county split in two, and that might explain part of it. Anyway, I would urge you, if you have an interest in the Civil War or in statehood, to take a look at this page, which again can be found from our front page, which is the Child of the Rebellion Sesquicentennial Project. So again, I'm trying to note that a lot of the links, a lot of the rich resource links can be found right off of the front page. If you're looking for materials on what we have in our collections, you would click on that State Archives link. The last piece of the puzzle is the History Center. If you're looking to find out information about history, then that's a good place to start. The audiovisual material, again, this is stuff that is extremely rich, and if I can find this one, I'll show it to you. There are several on here that just crack me up. There are some really, obviously very important ones, but there are a couple of these. I think this is it right here. Let's see if we can see this one here.
By day, Natalie Tennant's been working in the Secretary of State's office. The Fairmont journalism major won the right to carry the gun and wear the leather outfit after winning a cheer-off at a WVU basketball game. She made her debut last spring at the Blue and Gold game, hearing lots of cheers and jeers.
The protest helped me somewhat because it keeps me going. It doesn't let me get a big head.
She's been getting in shape to become the first female mountaineer.
I was a mascot in high school, so I always thought that it would be a nice idea to be the mountaineer. And I enjoyed being the mascot, but when I was a freshman is when I first thought about trying out for mountaineer. I didn't know that a woman could try out or that you didn't have to have a beard.
And now Natalie's practicing and thinking about that first time she takes the field with the Mountaineers.
I have former mountaineer friends, and they say that that's the greatest feeling that you'll have, Natalie, when you run across the field and shoot the gun.
And you'll be able to run across the field and shoot the gun?
Oh, yes, yes. That's why I'm getting in shape this summer to do it. Shoot it?
Yeah.
Steve, he goes like this.
Thank you. Just like every mountaineer, Natalie now has her name etched on this gun. And on
Go
opening
ahead
day...
and shoot it now. Steve?
Now you know why I'm a Buckeye.
That's pretty class. As I said, you can go down through here and find a lot of really rich material, and again, something that really brings it to life, I think, for our young people to see the audiovisual materials. A couple other things that I'll point out quickly. You can see here at the top, we talk about primary source materials, but secondary source is very important as well. We have a lot of articles that you can see here. West Virginia Historical Society publishes articles that are very valuable on different topics that you can read here. West Virginia History Journal, which was published here through 2006. You can see some of the volumes on here. You can see some of the articles on here that you can actually read. Most of the stuff you can find by going through these subjects. Again, as we got more and more material online, it became much more difficult to make it readily accessible to you. If you click on something like African Americans, you can see we have a whole string of materials here. One of the things I do with my Marshall students is assign them this school integration in West Virginia. And it kind of gives you a picture of being able to use primary sources in the teaching format. This is a chapter out of W.W. Trent, who was the state superintendent of schools at the time. This is a chapter from his book on integration. This is a newspaper article the following day after Brown versus Board of Education was announced. And Governor Marlin at the time announced that this is the law of the land and we're going to abide by it here in West Virginia. You have editorials that were written at that time. State schools, this is kind of neat because it shows a map detailing the progress of integration in West Virginia in the fall of 1954. We have also some materials, a man on the street interviews that are very valuable. Also these letters from the Trent collection itself. One of them very positive, the others very negative, and they can be a bit inflammatory. We chose a couple that weren't as bad, but they're still pretty bad. But again, for young people, very important that they note how drastically things have changed in the past 60 years, 50 to 60 years. So this is, again, we have quite a bit of information relating to African American history of West Virginia. Communities, this is something that you might find valuable. One particular thing, I mean, obviously we have some community histories that were written during the New Deal, various histories, and this just depends on whether there was one written. These are things from our collections up there. These are the different communities that we do have histories on. The thing that's very valuable here, Mary Jenkins, a former librarian here, put together a book or a publication called Place Names in West Virginia. This is something, if you're looking for that obscure town that you have no idea where it was located, you're just wondering, you saw where somebody was buried in this particular community or born in this particular community, you can go here and click, and it tells you the names of the community, the county in which it was, and usually a date, sometimes information about its previous name. So I find that one very, very helpful as well. Education. We have a lot of materials on education in West Virginia. You can go through here, you can see all the academies that were listed. One thing that's kind of neat, I think, are the photographs of schools in West Virginia. You can go here and click on the county, and you can see every photograph that we had. We had well over 1,000 photographs of different schools in West Virginia. I love looking at these one-room schools, photographs. Schools that are long gone, schools where there might be a building sitting out in the middle of the field that you didn't realize that was actually a one-room school. Some counties we have a lot more than others. I think there may be a county or two for which we do not have any schools. So we're always looking for that and looking for ways to possibly work with counties today and schools today to have students do that as a project. Exploration and settlement is one, again, that has a lot of primary source material. Lord Dunmore's War, that's something that's of course noted because of the Battle of Point Pleasant. You can go here and click on Dunmore's War primary documents, and the Yellow Creek Massacre, which kind of got the whole thing started up. In Hancock County, you can read recollections, reminiscences of that. You can read some diaries and journals and letters relating to the preparations for war, and then some of these are letters that are written to family members by people who were actually there in that Battle of Point Pleasant. These are transcriptions from the Waits and Kellogg. You can see it's pretty neat to actually read those early accounts. Government and politics. This is something, again, that's very useful for folks. I showed you earlier, we had the listing of elected officials. We saw the Secretary of State, for example. You can go through here and see, you want to know who the Attorney General was in a particular year, you can go through here and find the listing of all the Attorney Generals. In terms of our legislators, you can go here and look you can click either the House of Delegates or the Senate. If you wanted to look at legislators by last name, for example, you could come right here and it would tell you what county they were from, their years of service. Deborah, I don't know if we've updated this recently or not. It's
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I brought it up.
You brought it up today?
I think,
Yeah.
So again, this is very, very neat to have. You can also look by county. If you want to know who all the legislators were in your particular county, you can click on that one. The governor's page. I found the governor's page to be very valuable. You can go here, and we have a little bio for each one of these governors. And usually we have the inaugural address for some of these latter ones. Dick's put together audio and video clips of these governors. You can see a very brief bio, but those inaugural addresses are neat to have. I love this one. D.D.T. Farnsworth, who was our second governor of West Virginia, served for a total of 7 days. So as you might imagine, his inaugural address was none given. But we do have some really neat stuff from here. There's several newspaper articles on his inauguration. This is, I found another article actually, Deborah, recently from Farnsworth. I think it was in the Pierpont collection or somewhere else. Maybe it was at Boardman. So there are only 2 letters that I've ever seen that were written by D.D.T. Farnsworth while he was governor. Because again, 7 days, not a whole lot of time to write letters and do all that good stuff. But you can see right here, it's the letter, and he's writing to his parents, and I think it's just wonderful. He says, "I must confess that I owe my success in life to the goodness of God and the early training that I received from faithful and ever to be honored parents. I have never yet forgotten the last good and faithful lesson which you gave me when I first left your home, nor have I forgotten the promise that I've been made to keep and obey that counsel." That's really cool, to be able to read that letter that he wrote during that short period of time that he was governor. We also have finding aid for that collection. We have the D.D.T. Farnsworth collection. There are some letters and different things that we have. So the government, we have the constitutions, both the 1863 and the 1872 constitutions. You can read those on our website as well as some of the earlier Virginia constitutions. And I'll just show you one more thing, and then we'll stop and I'll take any questions that you might have. Labor is another one where we have a wealth of information, all kinds of things relating to the mine wars, relating to child labor, riots, different things like this. Paint Creek, Cabot Creek, I love this one. This is actually a neat thing because this is Mother Jones when she was under house arrest in Pratt, West Virginia. That would have been in 1913, I believe. And this is a kind of a rare photograph of the head of the militia. I think his name was Tom Davis. And this postcard, which we purchased, also had a note on the back that said older in terms of this woman right here with the funky hat. And we did a little research and found that actually this woman was the wife of a newspaper publisher out in San Francisco. I forget what his name was, something older. And he published a newspaper called the San Francisco Bulletin. And so we actually got that newspaper on microfilm and found that she had come to West Virginia and spent months interviewing Mother Jones, interviewing coal operators. I mean, really taking kind of a balanced perspective of this whole strike. And it's just fantastic material that you can go through again. Look at all of those articles, all of that information written again during that very time. Labor, again, we have all kinds of things related to Blair Mountain, everything. The disasters has stuff, of course, on Buffalo Creek. We have another exhibit on that. We have a lot on mine disasters that have occurred in Monongah, Farmington, just you name it. Obviously, we're not going to have it all out there, and it's sometimes difficult to find that, which we do have. Now, I would note as a last thing that you can search here on our website. I usually put in quote marks. If I did Daniel Farnsworth, let's see what happens. I haven't tried this, and my goodness, I better do something good. All right, so we found biographical sketches. How about if we do DDT Farnsworth? Oh, boy. This probably wasn't a good choice. Farnsworth collection, all kinds of things like that. So there's the On This Day on Farnsworth. Anyway, that's just a little bit of picture. Obviously, that's not everything that we have on our website, but it kind of gives you an idea. And again, we have probably more history, as you've seen from this evening, than genealogy, although we're continuing to work on adding those type things that will be most valuable to you as researchers. But, you know, as you've noted, I'm sure, in your research, a lot of times those historical documents provide information that you need for your genealogical research as well. So I'm done rambling. I'll be glad to take any questions that you might have, any suggestions in terms of improving our website. And certainly we recognize that does need to be done. Any questions? My gosh. Patsy?
No, I was just going to comment. I was down here when they were doing the, when Joan and were younger, doing the history bowl. Just questions. I was listening good, but I was setting up to stand up and give the answers, and the kids did not know the questions. But you all did such a good job with that.
Well, thank you. We do have to restrain some people who want to jump up and get involved, despite the fact that they're not, like Patsy.
Yeah, I was like, you can't see you. I'm like, okay, I'll say that.
We usually, you know, if we see the parents jumping at the bit and the kids don't answer, we usually let the parents provide the answer. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A friend of mine's father was president of the CIA, and he died before her children were born. And she found him on your archive site, and she was so excited because her children could see their grandfather, and he was making some sort of speech, and she was just really, really excited about it.
That's really fantastic. And we've had that same experience with yearbooks as well. You know, people who didn't know their parents, and they happen to come in here and look at the yearbook and are able to see that photograph when they high school or something. So it's really exciting when research leads you to that point. Thank you for sharing. Yes?
Actually, had a similar thing happen to me. I don't even know what I was doing on the website. I think I was really just bored one day. I happened to stumble on the website, and I found the schools. So I go to Fayette County and I see all the schools. Yeah, I don't remember my grandfather as a child, to be honest with you, but I know the resemblance. So I started looking and I saw an old woman schoolhouse and I saw a bunch of kids in the front. And I said, you know what, I know that's my grandfather. And it was in right outside of Hampstead, Mountain Cove. And there was a schoolhouse there, and it was in my grandmother's front yard. Was where it was set, and then there he was with his brothers and sisters in the same photo. Wow. And it's an amazing photo.
That's really good. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Information on, tax lists, early tax, lists.
Not online. If we have anything like that, guys, it will be on microfilm. Jamie,
What time period are we talking about?
what time period are we?
Probably back in the 1860s,
1860s.
prior to Civil War.
Prior to the Civil War, we have them.
We do have those, and are those on microfilm, or those are on microfilm? And Jamie's just the person to come and see, and she's normally in the library 9 to 1 or working on Thursday evenings, and she'd be more than happy to help you with that.
They started in 1790.
Elaine said they start in the 1790s.
I'm very interested.
I would note that, certainly the most important thing that we have here in the archives is our collections, but close second is the staff. We have a tremendously dedicated staff that are extremely knowledgeable about the subject matter and about our collections here, and we're truly blessed to have them here. Yes, ma'am.
Is there information somewhere about, suppose I have my own pile of documents, is there some place on the website that would help me to figure out, how in the world can I organize this?
No, but that's something that we probably need to do, and certainly if you call us and ask us, we'd be more than happy to provide you whatever information that we can to help. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at in the future, is ways that we can provide assistance to the public in terms of dealing with these documents, and certainly raising awareness of what we take in here at the archives, what's of value to us, because there's a ton of stuff out there, and yeah, we need to do our job to help with that.
If you were interested in the taxes, we also had some farm censuses, and it would tell you how many head of cattle they had, and how much butter and milk, and everything came from their farm.
Yes, I would be.
We don't have a whole lot of them.
In that time. If it happens to be in the county that I'm in.
Any other questions? I'd like to thank you very much for coming out and encourage you to come back September the 4th for American Glass by 3 to 6. Thank you.